This special episode of the podcast recorded at the WERC Conference is brought to you by Big Joe Forklifts. For almost 75 years, Big Joe Forklifts lithium-ion walkie stackers, pallet trucks, and access vehicles have been the standard of quality in factories, warehouses, and DCs across North America. Engineered in Wisconsin, Big Joe is known for their rugged, easy-to-use designs that provide a low-cost alternative to traditional forklifts. I personally enjoy my LPT 26 for moving pallets. For more product specs and more information, visit BigJoeForklifts.com. That's BigJoeForklifts.com. Hey, it's Kevin Lawton, and I'm here at the WERC Conference 2024 in Dallas, Texas, recording some podcasts. And on this podcast, I'm going to be joined by Bob DeBusk. He is the North American Sales Director, and he is with the PIAB Group, which also contains Tawi, who we've had on the podcast quite a while ago. But we're going to get a little bit update on what they're up to, and we're going to talk a little bit about container unloading and how they've kind of solved one of, I would say, typically one of the hardest tasks within the warehouse is to unload containers, probably one of the most labor-intensive as well. So we're going to find out about that solution and how they're kind of addressing that and how that came about. So, Bob, it's a pleasure to have you here. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. Appreciate you having me. My first attendance to the WERC Conference, so it's nice to be here.
Oh, okay. What do you think so far?
So far, I'm impressed with it. I like kind of the way they've got some of these discussions set up in a roundtable situation. It's great feedback from individual to individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great to have you here. Great to talk to you and catch up to see, what's been going on with you guys. So now tell us a little bit about, I guess, PIAB Group, and then tell us a little bit about Tawi too, which is a part of PIAB Group now. So just tell us what you guys do and what's your kind of focus.
Sure. Yeah. So to clear up the how we are a part of the PIAB Group is, Tawi was bought up by them a few years ago. We were a great addition to their portfolio. They were already in vacuum conveying and vacuum automation, and so they add vacuum lifting to it. So we are their ergonomic handling division, or lifting automation division. So it's nice to be a part of that group and have that extra recognition and exposure there. And then as far as the container unloader and the logistics goes, I would say that we kind of started to get into logistics about 7 years ago, and we had, three very big companies approach us all at the same time that were looking for a mobile vacuum solution. And so we had to develop something for them. And, one was a sporting goods store, and one was a manufacturer of garage door lifts, and one's a general warehouse supply industry. So it was very broad in what we had to accomplish for them. And we ended up developing what is now what we call our mobile order picker, or our MOP. And that's the solution that came out with, so we pick it up with any forklift, and these particular distribution centers for driving around picking up their orders for their other locations that there were store locations that they were shipping to. So if they needed a few of this product, they would drive over with the vacuum lift and lift it onto a pallet, and then they'd go to the next location and pick the order and drop it off, and nobody ever had to lift a box.
Yeah.
So it was a good solution, and actually we just coming out with a second version of it, our MOP 2.0. And we're excited about that, but really most excited about the container unloader we just released out into the market last year.
Yeah.
Something we've been developing for a while.
Let's clarify a little too, because we're talking about vacuum, we're talking about MOP, right?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about from a cleaning aspect, right? We're talking about vacuums that can lift heavy objects, right?
Exactly. So I can see how that'd be a little unclear. So the mobile order picker, we call the MOP for short.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's a battery-powered vacuum lift.
And tell us a little bit about kind of because these vacuums are, not your average like household type of vacuum, right? I mean, they have some serious power. So talk to us a little bit about, why would someone choose to utilize a vacuum in their warehouse to lift things versus, just forks or just lifting it on its own? I mean, what kind of power do you have behind these vacuums?
So the power behind the vacuum, man, you kind of gave me a loaded question there. Let's see, the vacuum pump itself, it's an electric three-phase, powered vacuum pump, and it can move some air. And with that vacuum pump, we're able to actually lift up to 600 pounds.
Wow!
And the vacuum does all the gripping and lifting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see sometimes, and I think at first when it's new to someone, they have a little bit difficult time trusting that it's going to hold. But we've been a company for 100 years, and we invented the vacuum lift over 40 years ago, and we trust it. It works.
Yeah.
So we've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some of the videos too. I've seen it in action at like ProMat and Modex too, the examples. And it is like, I mean, it's kind of effortless in a sense. Like once you get that suction and, it becomes, I guess, weightless to the user.
It
right?
is. That's a good point to bring up because
Yeah.
oftentimes we hear it kind of mislabeled as a lift assist. It does all of it for you.
Yeah.
So it's not really an assist. It just comes in and does 100% of the lifting, it's really beneficial for those companies where they have their associates that are lifting repetitive boxes and bags and drums all day long. They use that lift, and now their operator doesn't necessarily have to do that lifting, and it's cuts down on the workday fatigue.
Yeah.
It allows for them to hire pretty much anyone they want to do the job. They don't necessarily have to go after the 20-year-old guys that are ready to lift 50-year-old boxes. So it really broadens that workforce that they can choose to hire from, and it's very beneficial.
Yeah.
You see a lot of out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you guys have figured out how to harness this vacuum technology within the warehouse to be able to lift things for people, right? And kind of take that burden off their backs, their legs, all together. And lifting up, to 600 pounds, I mean, that's just insane to think. I mean, that's like a huge amount, which is such a great thing to be able to do and make that easier. So now you've come to the mobile order picker, right? The MOP and the MOP 2.0.
Right.
And now you're also focused on container unloading too. So tell us, I guess, how did the evolution of the product kind of come to the container?
Sure. Well, traditionally, our vacuum lifts have always been stationary and fixed on a crane and primarily sold into manufacturing. And then with the mobile solution, we were able to get into logistics. And having been in that industry a little bit longer, you start to notice some of these other pain points. And you get lots of requests for the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
We decided to develop a solution for it. And that's where the container unloader came, because we hear the same complaints from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
We can't keep anybody in this position. It's labor intensive. We have injuries from people reaching or boxes falling down on them, lift injuries for soft tissue. So with that turnover and the expense that comes with those injuries and how it affects those associates, it's something that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
Part of our mission is to help provide solutions where nobody has to lift anything. And we spent a few years doing this and partnered with some pretty big name companies out there to give us some feedback and give us some continuous development. And so after about 4 years of working on it and a few different versions and variations, we finally have our finished product, and we've been selling them for a little while now. We've got several customers out there, some wonderful case studies that show how we've been able to, well, for one instance, we had a distribution center that was bringing in microwaves.
Okay.
Microwaves can be pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And they they were all floor stacked in there, and they had 6 people that were unloading these trucks, and between them taking them out of the truck, palletizing them, and having a forklift driver, it took about 6 hours for them to do that.
To do one truck.
To do one truck.
Wow.
And then with our
that's
equipment,
a killer. Yeah.
they were able to do it with one person on the inside using the vacuum lift to set it on the conveyor. That's a part of that container unloader, and it conveys it out down a roller conveyor where somebody was using a vacuum lift to sort to the pallets out there. So we had one person on the inside, one person on the outside, and one person running the forklift, and they were able to do it in half the time with half the people.
Wow.
And with zero risk of injury.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful case study in that instance. Of course, not all of them are going to be like that, as much as I'd like for them to be able to paint that picture for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that example is huge because, I mean, it's talking 6 people, 6 hours, right? But if you look at that, really, I mean, it's like 36 man hours. I mean, it's almost a week of wages on one container, which is insane, right?
And they were doing 3 of those a day.
Yeah.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
Just on that one area for the microwaves. So that ROI calculation for them was very pretty.
Yeah.
And they've since purchased several more. So we're happy about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about like what the solution looks like, because I think we're seeing, I would say we're finally seeing where more and more people are looking at the container unloading and trying to come up with solutions for that. And obviously you guys have one that's been proven, as you just said, and is out there in the market too as well. So tell us a little bit about how the solution looks, because you have the vacuum, and then what happens after the vacuum.
Yeah, so it would be a little bit difficult picture to paint without having my my videos and pictures here, as a sales guy would typically have to present. So what we have is it's completely mobile. It does have a battery in it that allows for you to drive it from one dock door to the next.
Okay.
And
on its own? Or?
On its own,
oh, okay.
completely independent. Yeah. And once you get it to that dock door, you will have to have access to power, so you can plug it in to power that vacuum pump and the conveyor that's attached to it. While it's plugged in and running, it's also charging that battery for you.
Yeah.
So when you plug it in, you have a platform on there that the operator stands on, and that platform will raise up and down to allow for them to reach all areas of that container, top to bottom, so they don't have to do that reaching or put themselves in a position that is not so ergonomically friendly, and they're going to be at risk for that lift injury. It's big enough to hold 2 operators if they want 2 people on the inside. And then there is a vacuum lift that is there for them to use as an option. And with that vacuum lift, it's got a capacity that go up to 110 pounds. And with that, they're able to pick from all corners of that container and lift the packages and set them on a conveyor that has a 175-pound capacity. It could be up to 36 inches wide and convey these packages out.
Oh, okay.
And once it goes out there, whether they have a roller conveyor or they decide to get one from us, we catch that roller conveyor on out. And if they want the full solution, we do have portable vacuum lifts, as we talked about already, that we can set up on the outside. And if additional sorting needs to be done, they can then put those packages on the pallets. Forklift driver takes them off.
Interesting. So you could have a vacuum on both sides, basically, of the conveyor, the rollers. Yeah.
And it's completely mobile, so you can take it from one dock door to the next dock door in just a few seconds. You don't have necessarily something fixed like a lot of the conveyors that you see out there now. You have to have one per dock door. So it gets to be a little bit pricey.
Interesting. And so now, you mentioned that it goes up and down, right? And I think, if we look at containers, especially floor-loaded containers, the idea from, upstream, right, is like, how can we get as much as possible in that container? We need to cube out that container, maximize that. And, a lot of times there's, I would say, and I'm not saying everybody out there, but, a lot of times there's little thought to how that's going to look from an inbound perspective and an unloading perspective. So you have things that are, placed all the way at the top of the container that are like very tight in there. There's maybe like just a little bit of space in there. So when you utilize the vacuum lift, at that very high spot, right, and say you have to grab a box from the side, is there any risk in doing that? Or is that, is it going to handle it perfectly fine where it's going to like come off on the side and then it's still going to be attached?
Sure. There's always risk with that, whether you're lifting it with a vacuum lift or you're lifting it by hand. It's always going to be a chance of something happening. But I would say that usually when we see with the vacuum lift is once it's got a grip on something, it's got a grip on it, and you have to manually pry it apart or break that seal. But there are situations where that box maybe changes shape or the tape seam pops open. There's things that could happen. But typically what we find is you grab it from that face and you pull it out and it holds it. It swings down, you set it on conveyor. It's not an issue.
Interesting, yeah. Because I would think that, I guess what I'm getting at is like, do you have to manually unload that top layer first to get the machine in there, or can you start all the way at the top?
Well, you don't. And I think one of the benefits that I completely skipped over about the solution is that the conveyor that we have in there, it does flex up and down. So you can raise it up or down so you can get those top packages or those bottom packages. Additionally, it extends in and out. So if you want, you can get that conveyor right up just an inch or two from that box. And because it has a tacky rubber surface, you could just use the vacuum lift to kind of get it started onto that conveyor, and the conveyor will pull the rest of the way out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's a nice added feature to it that allows for you to eliminate that risk of what you're concerned about. But I tell you, the first few times that I was grabbing that top layer, those spot boxes, and it was swinging out on me, even I had a little difficult time trusting it. I've been around selling them for years, but I never dropped one on my toes, so I'm good to go with it.
Interesting. So, and now from that perspective too, because I know, you mentioned, you had vacuum lifts that are attached to like overhead kind of crane systems and things like that. What does the, if you look, whether it's the mop or this container unloading system, what does the infrastructure change look like in your facility? Do you need to put in any type of infrastructure change, or is it plug and play basically?
Yeah, so that's it just depends, right? That's the best way to answer that question. So the way we've done this for so many years, being we're not having the mobile solutions or the portable solutions, is we did have to have a fixed structure in place. And we manufacture all the cranes ourselves right out of our American office here in Chicago. So our sales reps will come out, and if there's something that does need a structure, like if we have to mount a jib crane or a bridge crane that's to the ceiling or on the floor, we'll spec that out. And we understand that real estate is a very precious commodity.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter really what industry you're in. It's tough to get that space, and you want to maximize all of that. So we've got several solutions that will have no footprint at all if we can suspend it from the ceiling. Or some of our jib cranes, it's just on a base plate that is 15 by 15, and we can stuff that off in a corner or behind a conveyor, really keep that space open for all the foot traffic and forklift traffic. But with the container unloader, it's mobile.
Gotcha.
With the mop, the mobile order pickers, those you typically charge in your pit station, or the mobile or the container unloader, because it charges whenever you're using it. You can park it anywhere you want.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think that flexibility is such a key in having a good solution to be able to move around, like you said, and not be necessarily, I guess, tied to one place or something like that, and have that kind of flexibility overall. So very interesting learning about these solutions from you. And I'm curious, I mean, I mentioned earlier, obviously there's companies now that are trying to address this container unloading solution. So, if people are looking out in the market, and Modex was recently happened, right? And obviously there was a bunch of different options out there for container unloading that are coming out there. Not saying that they're all necessarily proven yet, right?
Right.
But if somebody's looking at maybe like a fully automated solution versus like this vacuum solution, what should they take into consideration there, and why would maybe going the vacuum route be more beneficial?
Sure. I mean, the fully automated solutions have come a long way.
Yeah.
They still have a little ways to go. I think they're getting there a lot faster than I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest difference is that TOWIE embraces the human element. So we still need those operators. We're not trying to cut anyone's job. We're trying to make their jobs easier. So they've got that work-life balance, so they're not getting injured on the job or going home with sore back, or their productivity doesn't drop, come Wednesday and Thursday and Friday afternoon, where they really become susceptible because of all that workday and work week fatigue. So I think that's the biggest difference, is that we embrace the human element, and automation is trying to get around it, and that's definitely the future. It's necessary. It's where we're going. We're just not quite to that point yet, I don't think. And I think there's still always going to be that need for the injury prevention. So we're 100%. Kind of we're bridging a gap, and we've got our own little niche product that fits in its own separate category from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fantastic stuff, and I think it's fantastic the way you've been able to find out how to leverage this vacuum power, I guess you could say, like in multiple different ways and use cases, and really be beneficial to the end user at the end of the day, and save them on that overall fatigue, and just those injuries that kind of just slowly creep up on you over time, that repetitive lifting. I think that's a beautiful thing to see. I mean, I think it's amazing to have a product that can address that and really have an impact from that standpoint, because the well-being of the worker is so important overall in the warehouse.
It is. Yeah. Especially with the turnover that so many people find in a job as manually intensive as this.
Yeah.
If distribution center A is using a container unloader from TOWIE to make the job easier, and all the rest of them on the same road paying the same but requiring you to do it manually, it's a big difference maker for the employer to help keep that retention rate lower, or higher. So
and I can vouch for that 100%. I mean, I used to manage a building where we were doing 6 to 8 containers floor loaded a day unloading, and that was probably our highest turnover spot, because people just don't want to do that. After a while, they're like, no, I'm done. I mean, so anything you can do to help alleviate that and takes a lot of that, strenuous activity away, I think is a huge win. So it's been very interesting to learn more about PIAB and the TOWIE solution, and especially the container unloading side. So Bob, I appreciate you stopping by here at our table at work and talking to us on the podcast. If people are interested in getting in touch or learning more about the solution, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I think the easiest way to be, just go to TOWIE.com. On there, we've got our phone number listed. There's contact forms that they can fill out, and we'll have a sales rep get back in touch with them within 24 hours usually.
All right, great. And we'll put all that information at thenewarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So, Bob, thank you once again for chatting with me today.
Yeah.